Welcome to the Middleware Tech YouTube channel. In this series, you'll learn about encapsulation in Python. All code examples used in the videos will be available on GitHub. Let's get started.
Oriented programming. That means these are some of the OOPS features must be supported by this language, like class, object, encapsulation, polymorphism, abstraction. Since Python support this OOPS concept, all these features, so we say that Python is one object-oriented programming language. So out of these three things, we have spent inheritance, TAN. We have spent with good hands-on labs. We have tried to talk about this first three OOPS concept. So let's move with another next one. Okay, now next is encapsulation and abstraction. Let me talk about these two parts, and then I'll go with polymorphism. To talk about this part, let me take one example first. Example in the sense, assume, let me, because who already knows the concept fine, for who don't know, for them it will be helpful. Let me, I'm going to, this is an ATM. So I'll visit ATM with my debit card or credit card. Debit card or credit card. Okay, so I'll visit ATM using debit card and credit card. Now, as an user or as a customer, I'll visit in that bank. As a customer, I'll visit inside this bank. Fine. Now, what are the operations I'll do as a customer? What are the operations we have to do with the bank as a customer, like withdraw or deposit or check balance or change PIN, something like that, right? And this ATM, bank ATM, a backend, it is connected with a particular server. Assume it is an application server, and that server is located in a particular location. And this application server may be connected with some other database. And this database will be in some other location. Okay, this is the scenario. Now, as a customer, when I'm going to, this is, so as a customer, when I want to withdraw money from an ATM, so as a customer, I have been given some of the functionality that I can use with this ATM, like I can withdraw balance, amount, I can deposit amount, I can check balance, I can change PIN. Like this way, some of the functionality I can do as a customer with the bank ATM using my debit card or credit card. Fine. Now, on the other side, that ATM is connected with an application server on the other side. As a customer, I'm not aware about that where is this application server. As a customer, I'm not aware about where is this database. I'm not aware about the server location as well as database location, as well as the bank people, they will not tell me, or I don't have the privilege, or I don't have the permission to think about to have some information about which is the backend server, how many servers is there, in which location that server is there, what is the actual database vendor, in which database value is being stored, what is the cache server that is used in the internal architecture, in which location they are deployed, who is going to manage them. All the internal configurations are hidden from the customer. Fine. Customer not at all aware of then, and customer should not know about that also. All those details is completely hidden from the customer. What customer should know? The functionality that is been given to me as a customer from the bank, only customer will implement those functionality. Fine. Rest of the functionality is hidden from the customer. Customer is not allowed to access or implement those functionality. So what is the point is that some of the functionality is available, or some of the functionality is being available to the customer, so that customer can use those functionality to implement, to complete his task, right? So bank have exposed those functionality to the customer, right? So when bank have exposed those functions to the customer using some debit card and credit card, and bank have hidden some function details from the customer in its internal applications, right? So when bank is exposing those functionality to the customer, that concept is called abstraction. Abstraction is an OOPS concept. So abstraction means the functionality that is being exposed to the customer. That is abstraction. That concept is called abstractions. And the functionality that is hidden from the customer. The functionality that is hidden from the customer, that concept is called encapsulation. So bank have hidden some functionality from the customer. That concept we defined using OOPS, that is called encapsulation. And bank can expose some function to the customer, that customer can use it to implement its day-to-day operation. That is called abstraction. Okay, so this is the concept in object-oriented. When I say that object-oriented programming means the details. I told you that what is object. Object contains some state and behavior. That means the object has some attribute and action. So that some of the action and attribute I have to make it hidden inside my object, that to implement security. So that security, how I'm going to implement, that is nothing but the encapsulation, and how when I'm going to expose the functionality to the customer, that is called abstraction. So in object-oriented programming approach in Python, how I make abstraction? Abstraction is implemented in Python. Abstraction is implemented using one class that is called abstract class. So interface concept is also there, that is not used a lot. So mainly this abstract class we used in Python to implement the concept of abstraction, whereas we have a private access specifier. By default, I've not told you the access specifier too much. By default, if you create a variable and method in Python, that is by default public. In Python program, if I'm going to create a variable and method that is by default public, we have the concept of private access specifier concept is there in Python programming. So using this private access specifier, Python will implement encapsulation. Okay, so in object-oriented programming approach, abstraction is implemented using abstract class, and encapsulation will implement using private access specifier. Okay, so what is that private access specifier? I'll tell you, right? So this is the idea. In object-oriented programming approach or design, the functionality I want to expose to the customer, I'll put inside an abstract class to implement the concept of abstraction, and the functionality that I want to hide from the customer, to implement that, I'll use the concept of encapsulation, where I'm going to use private access specifier to hide the attribute or method details inside my object. So how we can implement? Let me understand one by one how we can implement the OOPS concept of encapsulation. Let me understand one by one. So I'm talking about first encapsulation. So encapsulation generally implemented is generally implemented in two levels. One is called variable level, another is method level. So variable level and method level, we generally implement encapsulation inside a Python class. How to implement encapsulation or hiding, what I am to say, using variable level? We have to make variable as private, variable as private. And how to implement encapsulation in a method level? We have to make method as private. Now what will happen if I make a variable as a private? What will happen if I'll make a method as a private, right? So let us explore more into this. Okay, so let me write one class. Let us explore it into more using some example how we can implement the concept of encapsulation using private access specifier. Let's take some example on this. Right? Okay. Okay. Now, see, I'm creating a class. Let's take the class that you had taken last day of pane class you have used, right? For the pane object, if you remember, you have taken that pane object, pane obj. So we told you that pane obj contain attribute and action. Told you, right? So attribute, we have taken only two attribute. That is called color. Okay, and action we have taken right and cost. Now if I'm going to create a class pane, right? Okay. Now when I'm creating this class, pane class should have a particular instance variable. How you can going to define the instance variable inside of a pane class? Already you know, right? How to define instance variable? Generally define instance variable inside the constructor. So first define the constructor. Inside this constructor, we generally use the instance variable. How? self dot color equal to color, or if I want to define it hard coded like this, we do. Similarly, you can use another instance variable you can create inside the pane class. Then I'll use self dot cost equal to some. This is cost something like that, right? Okay. Now, if you see this pane class, this is a constructor inside the pane class, and we have defined two instance variable inside my pane class. Fine, no issues. Now, how I'm going to access this instance variable? How I can access this instance variable? We have to create an object of pen, and then I have to use p dot color. Use p dot color object or attribute name print p dot color. Right? Okay. So if I want to execute the code like this, it should work. There is no problem. It will work very well. There is no problem. So just see here. I want to execute using Spider. This is a code related to start. Spider. First, we'll check that this basic example is working or not. Then I'll talk about what is the meaning of this private access specifier. So, now see, when I create any particular class, inside a class, I have constructor. Inside a class, if you want, you can create your own method also. Right? Inside a class, you have instance variable. So let me talk about one point, like whatever the things we are going to create inside a class, that is by default public. Okay, one point. The point is that is class variable and method inside the class is by default public. Class variable and method inside the class by default public. Okay, inside the class they're by default public. Now here that means here this color and cost instance variables are by default public, right? So let me check it is running or not first. This is a basic program itself using a spider. I'm talking about encapsulation example. So just create a separate class, file, save as, and create a particular folder where you're creating all the files, where our files are inside this. Create a particular folder for encapsulation. Okay, so inside this folder, I'm going to create a particular class called pen.py. This is my class. So file, save all. Fine. So this is a constructor, and this is the instance variable inside the constructor, and this is a method variable. Save it. File, save all. Okay, now execute it. You can see it is working fine, right? So this is the instance variable by default. Right. public, so we can access that instance variable value outside the class using object name. Now the point is here, how I'm going to implement encapsulation. We hide the object details using an access specifier that is called private. So how we can implement private variable in Python? How we can create private variable in Python? In Python, we create a private variable using this. So how to create private variable? Private variable we use like this, underscore. Using underscore, we generally create private variable. Okay, to underscore. And to create a color as a private variable. Now it's a private variable. Okay, I can create a private method also. Just you have to use to underscore before talking about private method. Just what you have to do, you have to just use to underscore before the method, like this. The method become private. You have to use to underscore before the variable, then that variable will be private. Now this variable is a private, this method is private. So what does it mean by private? Private means they are not accessible outside the class. Public means they're accessible everywhere, right? So public means accessible everywhere. Private means accessible only inside the class. That is the meaning. So using this private access specifier, we hide an object value inside my class. Okay. Now this so that we can make an instance variable using private, using underscore. To underscore. Similarly, we can make a method using private using this to underscore. Fine. Now, if I make a particular, now let me check how we can hide a variable value using private. Right. So to talk about what I'll do is that we will make this variable color variable value as a private. So what I have done, I'm just making this private variable value as private. The color is a private. Now color is a private. Now how I can access the value of color outside the class? Can I access? No. Private variable value you cannot access outside the class because it's a private. Let me check is it accessible or not. What is the error? Let me check. Open your code. What I have done, I have just made this variable as private. Now it's a private variable. You cannot access private variable outside your class. This is the class. Let me check. Just execute it. We can see here pen object has no attribute color because that color is not available outside the class. Right? You can make cost also.
So we are making it private by adding underline before the
variable.
What? The variable?
Before the variable, if we use to underscore, then it will become a private.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So in this example, I have made this color as a private variable. Now in this example, color is a private variable. Okay. So now when you make it private, you cannot access that private variable, creating an object of a class because its value is hidden inside an object. Right. So using we can implement encapsulation for your instance variable inside your class. So this value will be hidden inside an class object. That is hiding using private variable. Just now I told you that we can hide an object. We can implement that hiding in variable level as well as in method level also. We can implement this hiding in variable level as well as method level also. So in this example, I have just shown you the example how I can hide this variable value and how I can use this hiding in variable level, because this is a variable, that is a private variable you have created here. Correct. Okay. Now I have to give an example how I can hide a method outside from outside the class, right? So let me write one method first. Let me write one method. Method def m1. This is my method, and self, right? And assume write something print. And inside this, you can write like this is a public method. Why public method? Because by default, if you declare a method, if you're not going to define any access specifier, by default a method is public. So this is a public method inside your class. How I can access this method? Using object.method name. Okay, so p dot method name m1, right? So I can access. Let me check it's working or not. It should work. Control C. In my code, I have created a private method. See, public method. I have created a public method. This is a public method. Fine. How to access this public method? I have to use p object name dot method name. Yes. So just save it, file, save all, and execute. So if you execute, you can see here that if you execute, you can see here. Okay, so let me resolve it first. Save it, file, save all, Control Z. If you make it probably no issues, just you have to disable this line, then it will work. Fine. Okay, so file, save all. Now if you see, this is a public method. Can I access this public method creating an object of a class? Yes, there's no issues. It's working fine. We can access public method creating an object of a class. There is no problem. I'm talking about that how I can implement encapsulation in the method level using private access specifier. It is a public method. Public method, if you have inside a class, you can access the public method creating an object of the class, and it's working fine. No issues on this. Now let me see how I can access a private method, right? So what I have to do is that I want to create a private method inside the class. So let's create a private method inside a class. Let's create private method def. How to create private method? Underscore, true underscore, and just write m2 and self. Now m2 is a private method. M2 is a private method, right? Write something inside this, like private print, and inside this I want to write this is a private method. Okay, so it's a private method. How to understand its private method? Here is 2 underscore before that. So can I access this private method outside the class? Let me check. We can't, because private method is not available outside the class. Let me check whether we can access a private method outside the class or not. This is my private method. This is a private method. And this private method, if I want to access out the class, I have to use p.m2. Should not be available outside the class. Let's see. Yes, m2. So it is saying that there is no m2 inside your class. That means it is not accessible outside the class. That's why, right? So then how I can going to access this private method, right? Private method. So private method, how I'm going to access? Private method you can access, like, since the private method is inside a class, you cannot access this private method outside the class creating an object of the class. So private method can be accessible only inside the class by using some other public method. So if you have a private method inside the class, that can be accessed only via a public method in the same class. Right? So in the same class already I have one public method called m1. Only m1 can access your private method. No one else. Only m1 can access, because m1 is a public method inside your class. Now how m1 can access this private method? We have to use self dot m2, right? And this is your private method. So who is going to access a private method? Some other public method inside the same class whom we are calling. So I don't have to write this line. If you call p.m1, p.m1 itself, it's a public method. And as according to this code, this public method only calling this private method. This public method only call this private method. Right? Okay. So let me execute. So just see here, when I call p.m1, when I call p.m1, it's got printed. This is a public method. And since you're calling self.m2, so this is a private method, that statement also gets printed. Right? So that is how we can implement, we can hide a private method from a class using this private access. Similarly, we can hide a private variable inside the class using underscore, two underscore before the variable. If I want to print the value of a private variable, what I can do? Assume I want to print the value of private variable. Color I've used here. So just save it. How I'm going to access this? Self.color. That's it. Save it and execute. So you can see here this private variable value we can access. Right now, this private variable value can then outside the class I want to access. Outside the class you cannot access. Outside the class you cannot access private method. No, you can't. Private method can be accessible only inside the same class using some other public method. Then how I'm going to access this private variable outside the class? If you remember last time we talked about private variable can be accessible, private variable value can be accessible outside the class using getters and setters for this instance variable. Creating getters and setters for this instance variable, we can access the private variable value outside the class. because getters is going to return the instance variable value. Last day we have done that examples how we can use accessor and mutators. We've given that example last day, right? So this is the the another one part that we want to explore here, that how we can implement encapsulation in method level as well as in variable level using this private